You are wasting your life in your comfort zone and you don't even realize it. So let's explore this today. There's a very common phrase that is spoken about when we refer to our comfort zone, and that is leap and the net will appear. The thing about that, though, is that most of us in many, many moments of our lives are actually too afraid to stand on the edge of that cliff and to actually take that leap. It may be in a work situation. It may be in a familial environment, family, friends, social circumstances. We find ourselves with an opportunity to stand on the edge of that cliff and take that leap, but we are often too afraid to even walk up to the edge of the cliff, let alone spread out our arms, turn around and fall backwards and allow that net to catch us. However, from my personal experience, what I can say with absolute confidence is that when you do take that leap, when you muster up and summon that courage to walk up to the edge of that cliff, to spread your arms out wide, to turn around, to not even look at where you are leaping and to fall backwards and wait for that net to catch you. When you do that, things change. And I want to talk about the net, that proverbial net that appears when you actually take that leap. Because if you imagine that you are falling from the edge of a cliff and there is a net waiting to catch you, that net is not rigid. It is flexible. It has slack. It's got an elasticity to it. Yes. So for those of you who are familiar with that feeling of falling and being caught, you'll know what I'm talking about. The give in that net from where you land and you first touch the net and the elasticity that allows you to spring down, you are scooped up by that net. The momentum continues to a certain point and then you are brought back up to an equilibrium state. That space between when you first touch the net and down to the point of that full extension, the full stretch of that net is what I want to explore. Because I believe that the more often that we take that leap of faith and we have that experience of that slack, that elasticity, the give in the net, the more often we do that, the more our comfort zone grows and expands. The first time we do something, of course, is often the most uncomfortable, the scariest even. But as we continue to do it again and again, it becomes less scary, less uncomfortable. And the same goes with your comfort zone. And that applies across all areas of our lives. But what I would like to talk about specifically today is in our work lives, what we do to earn the income, the money, the financial wealth that supports us to live our lives. Because as much as we would love to live in a money-free environment many, many moments of the day, we currently live in a time where the exchange of money is what supports us to fulfill our lives. So, if it's safe for you to do so, I'd like you to close down your eyes. Just take a moment. And once your eyes are closed, I want you to visualize something. Imagine that you are standing at a fork in the road. The road is bitumen. There is grass on the left and on the right. It is green. And there is a very clear pathway on the left, option A. And there's another very clear pathway on the right, option B. So just take a moment and imagine that you are standing at that fork in the road. Option A is on your left. Option B is on your right. And once you have that visual and you can imagine yourself literally standing there at the fork in the road, I want you to imagine that this fork in the road represents the work that you do in your life at this point in time, the work in the world, however you earn that income. And on the left, option A is your comfort zone, the familiar. Perhaps it's a job that you have or the work that you currently do. Take a moment to really solidify that into option A on your left. Comfort zone, familiar, known, option A. And once you've done that, shift your focus to option B on the right. Now, you don't necessarily need to know exactly what option B is, but what we do know is that is beyond the limits of our comfort zones. Option B is risky. It may feel adventurous. It may feel bold, maybe a little uncertainty, if not a lot of uncertainty. It is unknown potentially. So take a moment and allow option B to really clearly form, not necessarily with a picture, but just know that the feeling of option B on the right is outside of the limits of your comfort zone. And once you have it, we are standing at this fork in the road and there are two options before us and we must make a decision. This is effective immediately. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, whichever choice A or B you make, that is your life from tomorrow morning. It takes effect immediately. So with that said, which one are you drawn to the most? Option A on the left, comfort zone, familiar, the job that you know, the work that you know. Option B, the unfamiliar, the unknown, beyond the limits of your comfort zone. There is no right or wrong answer here. I just want you to explore where you are drawn to. And I would be willing to bet that for those of you who are familiar with stretching beyond the limits of your comfort zone, will feel less intimidated and uncertain and scared of option B. But, and I can vouch for this myself, it does not mean that we do not feel any uncertainty or any fear about option B. So keeping your eyes closed, once you've worked out which feels more appealing, still imagining that this is your reality and it takes effect immediately. Same option on the left for option A, same option on the right for option B. The thing that's different this time around is that you have 2 months worth of wage or income or salary available to you, and you do not have to go to work for the next 2 months. Now, what I want you to consider here is, does that change your inclination? Does that change which pathway you would choose effective tomorrow? And once you have your answer, you can open your eyes. The reason why I wanted to share this particular scenario for you is because this is my lived experience. I've had this exact experience. 5 or so years ago, I was that person standing at the fork in the road. I had my day job made redundant. On the left for option A was choosing the comfort zone. I could just go and get another job. Option B was to dive into full-time self-employment. I had 2 months worth of wage, was given to me as a redundancy payment, and I had the option to choose that option B, that pathway on the right-hand side, and I took it. And what I know to be true is that from that moment, each time I choose that road less traveled, if you will, that pathway on the right, that option B, it gets easier and life becomes more magical. So Let's do a little bit of maths together. If you have a pen and paper, you might like to jot this down. It's easy enough that you can do it in your head though. So I want you to think about how old you are right now. So for me, right now, I'm 34. Let's say I live to 100. How old do you think you will get to? How old will you be? What is your life expectancy? How long would you like to live? Just pick a number. It's arbitrary in the sake of things, but let's say you've got a number. Let's say it's 100. So I'm 34 and I expect to live to 100. Let's work out the difference between how many years you have lived and how many years that you have left. So if you need to get your phone out and do the calculations, please do. So let's say you are 44. So 100 minus 44 is 56. So I want you to get this number. If you were to live to 100, how many years do you have left? And once you've got your number, you might like to write that down or just keep that in your mind. So now that you have your number for the number of years that you would like to live, how many of those are you going to spend choosing your comfort zone? Because one of the things that I know to be true is that choosing to live beyond the limits and make decisions beyond the limits of your comfort zone is that it is not a one-time decision. You won't just sit here with me in this moment live or listening back to the recording a little later and just make the decision now that I'm going to live outside of my comfort zone and then that's it. Click your fingers and it's done. Because it doesn't work like that. Living beyond the limits of your comfort zone is an ongoing thing. It's not a single time decision. It's not something that happens once and then it becomes your forever reality. It is a moment by moment decision. There are going to be big moments where you will find yourself standing at that fork in the road. And there are going to be moments that are small and you'll find yourself standing at a fork in the road. Each time you choose option B, going down that pathway on the right-hand side, you expand, like I talked about with the net, you expand that comfort zone of yours, and you are more likely to choose that road less traveled. And what I can say, and I'm sure that many of you can vouch for this as well, is when you do, life becomes a more rich and abundant experience. But it's not without risk. It's definitely worth it, but it's not always comfortable. We're talking about outside of the comfort zone. By definition, it is not meant to be comfortable. So we have a choice moment by moment. Every time we have this fork in the road, whether it be something big or something small, to choose to live beyond the limits of our comfort zone. But if you are wasting your life in your comfort zone, you must make the decision to take that first leap so that you can set up that trajectory for success, for fulfillment, for a rich, abundant, and inspiring, fulfilling life. And that is nobody's responsibility but yours. I find that the easiest way to move beyond the limits of my comfort zone is to have people to support me, friends, mentors, coaches, sisterhoods, online communities, connected, deep friendships and soul sisterhoods. I find that even though it is entirely my responsibility, that I do not have to do this alone. And when we lean on others, when we get that support from a variety of different sources, that supports us in getting beyond that fear, beyond that discomfort, and moving down that pathway on the right. So I'd like to show you a little something. I've got a little graph prepared. And once I've popped it up, if you can just let me know in the chat box that it is showing up on the screen okay, that would be really, really helpful. Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. Okay. So this is, I've pulled this from medium.com. And this is a little diagram about the comfort zone, the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. So we've talked about the comfort zone. We understand this is not a new topic, but what I want to do is explain using this diagram what I was talking about with that net. Each time that you land in the net and you feel the give, the stretch, the flexibility, the elasticity in that net, that allows you to move out from that comfort zone. And these are the stages that we go through. So on the left in that little gray circle, you can see the comfort zone. It's safe, it's comfortable, and we feel in control. For me, when I had that opportunity to either go and find another job or to dive into full-time self-employment, the comfort zone option was to go and find another job. What happened is that I moved into fear. I could have used excuses. I could have been intimidated and lacked in confidence that I could make the money and support and bring in that financial support for our household. So when we move beyond the comfort zone, the first zone we move into is the fear zone. It's like standing on the edge of the cliff. Yes, it's not comfortable. It's going to feel scary. I can certainly tell you that if I was standing literally on the edge of a cliff right now, I would feel fear. But when we move through that, we then move into the learning zone. We start to experience, as you can see here, we acquire new skills. That's that stretch, that give in the net that I mentioned. We are receptive to outside input. And so that's that support network that I mentioned, friends, mentors, coaches, support systems, communities. And then we start to look at problem solving, but we cannot do that. Problem solving, receptive to outside input, acquiring new skills, if we are stuck in either the fear zone or the comfort zone. And this is why we need to keep making this decision. Staying in your comfort zone is not going to work for you if you want to grow and expand and achieve success, inspiration, motivation, fulfillment, all of these amazing things that we are all seeking. So we move into the learning zone. What then happens is the more times you move through this process, through that comfort zone, through the fear, through the learning, we then come to the growth zone. And this is where the magic happens. We expand our vision, we surpass milestones, and we can define new goals where we then start back again in that comfort zone and move back outwards again and again and again. As I said, this is not a one-time thing. So what I'd like to close up with, I'll turn this little screen share off, move this over here. What I'd like to close up with is two key takeaway points here. I've just mentioned the first one. It's that this idea of moving beyond the limits of our comfort zone and no longer wasting our lives is an ongoing thing. You must take self-responsibility for this. No one can do this for you, and this is something that is an ongoing thing. The second thing that I want you to take away from this is that it is something that requires support. Doing this alone is frustrating, and I can say that from personal experience. When I have tried to move beyond the limits of my comfort zone and I have done it without a support network, it has been painful, frustrating, and it has taken far, far longer than it needed to. And so what I invite you to do is when you move beyond the limits of your comfort zone, seek support from people around you. Get a mentor, get a coach if you need that really formal support. If you're running your own business, that's something that I highly, highly recommend, because for me, with running my own business, the time when I didn't have a mentor or a coach, that's what I speak of when I'm talking about it being really frustrating and slow. Beyond that, get a personal support network, friends, family members, communities, support sisters. You people, you guys who are here live today are my support network. Yeah. And so when we do this and we do not do it alone, we exponentially magnify the power of what is possible outside of our comfort zone, through the fear zone, through the learning zone, and into the growth zone. So if you want your your work life, whatever that looks like for you, and it's going to vary from you to the next person to the next person. If you want that work life to be abundant and fulfilling and reap rewards beyond what you think is possible, have support, get support. And that is how we move beyond the limits of our comfort zones and stop wasting our lives. Okay.